Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hey guys. So today I want to talk about the best TV shows on NowTV because I've only recently subscribed to it, and I wasn't so sure about it at first, like in comparison to Netflix or Disney Plus. It doesn't actually have like the same amount of range, plus you have to pay extra to have all of the like films and the TV shows and etc. So today I'm just going to be talking about TV shows because I'm broke and couldn't afford the full set. But maybe, just maybe, with this YouTube channel, if I keep doing reviews, eventually, potentially, I'll be able to do full reviews. But anyway, the first one that I want to talk about is Yellowjackets. Now, Yellowjackets is like a cross between Bend It Like Beckham and The Hills Have Eyes. It's so gory, but also so like girl boss themes. It's basically a show that's first set between the 90s and the 2000s, or late 2000s. So it jumps back between this girls football team, and they're kind of the success of their school. So in the same way that in America they have like basketball teams or American football teams that are like the name of the school, well, this is the same but for women's soccer. I would call it football because I'm English, but I'm just saying soccer for the sake of argument. Anyway, they're about to go and play football for a national championship, and it's all very, very exciting, and they're all really, really talented. But the story alludes to a crash that happens while they're on the way to this football game, and they get stranded in Canada, I think, in like these vast spaces in Canada where it's just miles and miles and miles of just mountains and snow, and it's so desolate. And it's actually a true thing that people get lost in these kinds of places, and there's all these survival stories. Well, anyway, something extra spooky happens because it kind of suggests cannibalism, okay? And I don't want to spoil too much, but wow, it is pretty terrifying, all the while like combining this like positive feminine vibe. But yeah, I highly recommend it because especially with the first few episodes, you're just like itching to get to the actual plane crash, and then it just continuously gets more and more exciting. But at the start of the show, it basically makes you bond with each of the characters slowly. Like they each have very different personalities, and you get to know them all, and then you cut to their adult version. And the point of their adult version is that they don't want to talk about what's happened. So there's this constant mystery that's growing and growing and growing. The next one that I'm going to talk about has actually been on my mind ever since I've watched it, and that is The White Lotus. Now, I can't even start with how great this show is. It's almost like a dark comedy. And when I first started watching it, I didn't know that there was anything comedic about it. And then I just found myself laughing in all these really uncomfortable places. And that's kind of the brilliance of the show, is that before you even realize it's a comedy, it's kind of making you laugh. But at the same time, it's making you think. Not to be a cliche or anything, but it's really one of those shows that forces you to think. So the premise of this show is that a boat arrives to a resort hotel, and there's a group of different people who are all on their way to this resort, and the resort is in Hawaii. Now, each group are all just kind of weird in their own way. Like you have this couple and something seems a bit tense about them. They're newlyweds, but they don't seem too well matched. Then you have these two girls who come with their family, and one of them is a friend of the younger girl, the girl played by Sydney Sweeney actually. But there's also something weird going on there. Like Sydney Sweeney's performance is really, really good in that she does this kind of tense, mean girl, confusing position. And she acts it really, really well. Anyway, and then on the boat you also have this older woman. What is her name? Jennifer Coolidge, is that her name? She's a 2000s icon. Like what film for like Cinderella Story and stuff like that, like these classic movies from my childhood. She plays basically the same role but in the future. So she's like an older rich white lady whose mother has just passed away, and she's come because she wants to spread her ashes, but she's just kind of weird and like keeps like getting involved in weird places she shouldn't, like just waving people down and talking to them. But I would say the primary unexpected theme that comes out of this program is a post-colonial theme. So when I studied post-colonialism, the concept of post-colonialism really is argued against often because there isn't really a post-colonial, because we kind of live in a society which is still affected by the histories of colonialism. But it's a perfect post-colonial analysis because there's all these suggestions that come up about the fact that this is in majority a group of white people, rich white people, who've come to a hotel in Hawaii, and it comes out that the hotel is actually built on stolen land from Hawaiians, where the hotels have come up and they've taken huge amounts of land. And this is a phenomenon that's happening all over the world currently. Jamaica has a huge issue with it, with huge hotel companies coming and buying up massive amounts of land so that the native people who are from that place can no longer enjoy their beaches and the spaces like they used to. But this story, it involves that without it being explicitly about that. So it's making you think about it, but it's not forcing it on you. It's really your choice whether you want to take that narrative on. And personally, I 100% took that narrative on. But I thought that it was really interesting. It was the kind of show that I would want to show my parents, because it represented adult and this generation really well, and how they juxtapose against each other and what each group is fighting for and where the messages are getting lost. So all the while this comedy and this hilarity, there's this tense energy, and it's political and it's social, and yeah, it just blew my mind. Like, even though once you get closer to the end, you do figure out the twist, like right before it happens in the final episode. But either way, like when the twist was happening, I was like, because it's alluded to earlier on. And then when it happens, it's like, okay, I know what's gonna happen. But I didn't see it in the way of like, oh, I wish the twist were more suspicious or whatever. Because throughout the whole, they're setting up this twist without revealing it. So you're guessing, you're like, oh, I bet the twist is gonna be that. And then by the end, it's totally different. But I highly recommend. Okay, the final one, you already know what it is. It's goddamn Euphoria. So, like, I know that this is a show that's like so popular. It's almost too popular, but I don't care. Like, I do not care. It's just so beautifully made, and it represents today really well. It's one of the first TV shows I've seen that's about my generation, or about even a generation slightly younger than me, that I didn't think was cringe, out of touch, clearly made by boomers who are trying to guess what we want. I watched 13 Reasons Why after I watched Euphoria, just because I kind of wanted a comparison. And I hate 13 Reasons Why now. When I was watching it, I was just cringing throughout, or the main character is just so unlikable. And even in Euphoria, there are bare unlikable characters. That is not missed in Euphoria. But they're so nuanced, and they're so relevant to their generation that it works. Take Jules, right? One, this is the best representation of a trans body and a trans character that I have probably ever seen, aside from maybe Pose. But even then, it had the aspect of, that was a show that brought awareness to the difficulty of the Black trans experience at the time. Whereas Euphoria kind of paints the trans experience as very modern. And pretty quickly, the fact that Jules is trans is an aspect of her identity, yeah, but it's not like, oh, like she's trans and like that's a huge focus point. Like, Nobody ever makes a fuss about her being trans in the way that they probably would in our society. It probably would still be like, oh my God, like that girl is trans, right? But no, not in this show. In this show, Jules is accepted as a girl by even the hyper masculine, awful male characters, Nate. And I thought that was brilliant. Secondly, trans nudity. That's something that you don't see a lot. But the show normalized it, and Hunter Shaver just played the role so brilliantly. And I'm sure she drew off of her own experience a little bit for it. But again, it's the kind of representation that I think they'll be looking at in history books one day, in film and TV studies. Just because I really did feel it was quite revolutionary the way that Sam Levinson did it. So that's just one aspect, as well as the primary aspect which correlated to me personally. And it's that when you're a teenager, everything feels so real. Everything feels so end of the world. You know, for a lot of teenagers, you're not thinking about when you're going to be 20 or 25 or your future or bills or things like that. You're thinking about love, you're thinking about excitement, you're thinking about the next thing that's coming in a few days rather than a few months or a few years, right? And I know that there are a lot of teenagers who didn't have that experience, whereas I did. But say a character like Lexi, for example, she represents those teenagers, the teenagers who are thinking about their futures, who somehow have gotten it figured out enough that they know what is really important. But I would argue that for a lot of teenagers, particularly those that come from difficult backgrounds or those who are introduced to drugs or sex or slightly problematic things like that at a really young age, they're not viewing their lives as long-term, right? And I really had that for a long time, and luckily I got out of that, so I didn't have that anymore. But at the time, it's so intense. And the way that Sam Levinson has made it look is equally as intense. Everything is so powerful and monumental. Yeah, and I think that season 2, Euphoria especially, has started picking up the pace. And it's no longer just about characterization, and it's kind of developed into like a true drama, especially on the front of Rue, on the front of Cassie, on the front of Nate. God, I can't. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm already a big fan of NowTV with just the few shows that I've watched, and I would recommend them all, really, at least to try. Like you just have to give it a go and see what you think. I would probably recommend the White Lotus as the primary one. It has a similar intensity to Euphoria. And then Yellowjackets, it's so gory. So if you're not ready for like something that's like physically, like you might not be able to sleep that well, then maybe not. But I thought it was really good for capturing, you know, female camaraderie and also like just panic and kind of a doomsday film in itself. A TV show, sorry. I get so confused these days because I'm watching so many TV shows. But yeah, leave me a comment if you would like me to do more. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm like unbelievably passionate about film and TV. I think it shapes our culture and our society. Yeah, and I'm really proud of the current generation of film and TV. I'm not sure if that's a controversial opinion or not, but I cannot wait to be in my 30s or 40s and have some kids and make them watch all of these shows when they're teenagers. Actually, now that I'm thinking of it, these are some of these are a bit tense. But anyway, leave me a comment if you would like me to do more. I would absolutely love to. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.